Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry. With me, as always, is...
I'm very confused. I just need a chance to think things over. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Your whole... I was going to do a thing, but I flubbed it.
Yeah,
Should I try it again? Should I try it again?
No. The moment is past.
You've had your whole damn life to think things over. What's a few more minutes gonna do you good now?
We have fun.
And today we're talking about The Shining.
Yeah, we are.
Released May 23rd, 1980.
Yeah.
This is a movie that came and went. You know, I don't know if a lot of people have seen it.
No lasting legacy. It never found its niche in the zeitgeist. It never.
Yeah.
It has been referenced tirelessly over and over again by other mainstream properties like Friends or The Simpsons. You know.
The blood usually gets off at the second floor.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're just casually throwing it out there in the middle of the summer for, you know, well, why? What happened recently?
Well, the lady I just quoted, Miss Shelley Duvall, passed on, and we love her, so we want to celebrate her.
Yeah.
The best way we know how, which is to quote her endlessly, and to
watch The Shining.
and to watch her movies, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
R.I.P. to Shelley Duvall.
Love.
And you know, I've seen her in things here and there, but I'm not like familiar with her filmography. Like I always like you think of Shelley Duvall. Most people in the horror community, and your mind goes right to The Shining.
I mean, I came up in the 80s, so I was watching the Fairy Tale Theater television series that she executive produced. I just watched, I think it was maybe the day after I heard, it might have even been the night that I heard that she had passed on. I watched her Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme, which is kind of like a fairy tale, but, you know, with nursery rhymes, where she plays Little Bo Peep, and her husband, her real-life husband, plays this kind of normal guy, and they don't get along at all, but they're going to go off and find his mother, who's Mother Goose, who's been kidnapped. It's adorable. But I love her in Popeye, one of the most surreal movies I've ever seen in my life. Have you ever sat down and watched Popeye?
No,
with Robin
but
Williams?
I want to.
It is insanity. You spend the whole time sitting there going, how did this get greenlit? Like, effort was made. Like, makeup was applied to Robin Williams' forearms. It was insanity. Yeah.
You know those like videos that like people have been putting out, those AI videos? So it's like, you know, Harry Potter in like 100 years ago or whatever, or there's like a 1950s version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's just like the AI version. There's one of Scream. That like every time I've seen scenes of Popeye, it looks like it's like made by AI.
And the thing is, mostly practical sets. Like they're really on the water, like on the waves of the ocean and shit, and you're just kind of like, this is insane. And then you've got Shelley Duvall playing Olive Oil in it, just, you know, just completely
confused.
Yes, swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
And no, she's quite assertive in that one. And of course, she sings one of my favorite songs of all time. He needs me, 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 he needs me. It just goes on from there. Yeah, well, she's amazing.
And she was hot, you know, like like in. Forget the hyperbole there, but no, she's a very, like, she had an interesting look to her, but I mean, like, she's really sexy, and you know, like, because, you know, as like I was saying, like, most people probably recognize her from The Shining, and she's just so like kind of like, even like in the behind the scenes where she's just like, my hair is falling out, like she just has this like really stringy look because she's just like going through hell. But damn, she looked good doing it. And I was gonna say, well, so she was kind of like in the media probably about like 8 years ago. Do you remember the whole Dr. Phil
Yes.
thing? Where he had her come on the show, and the thing is, like, she's done interviews since then, and she's like been like completely lucid in those. Like, I don't know what was going on that day, but it was just not a good day, and he like completely exploited her, like put her out on the show and just like made her look a fool. And I mean, thankfully everyone turned on him and was just like, you piece of shit, and then like praised her. But she dropped off, I believe, like the early 2000s, and like she just like quit acting. And recently, like before her death, she did do another movie. I don't think it's released yet. I want to say it's called the Forest Hills.
Yes,
with,
I think that's what it is.
With Edward Furlong, Dee Wallace is in it. Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp.
I saw their exchange. Like, there was a clip running around on the internet, so, within all the madness, following her passing, and I got to see an exchange that the two of them had, and again, seemed completely lucid and in control of her instrument, and I was like, oh my god, she's like in a room with Felissa Rose. What's going on? This is amazing.
Yeah, and there was like even more recently, like just a few years ago, just talking about the experience on The Shining and and like the whole thing with like Stanley Kubrick, which like we'll get into in this episode. But I thought it was interesting that we did kind of reference her like not even a month ago, because we covered Beyond the Valley of the Dolls on the Cherry Picker After Dark. Go listen to it if you can. But the moment, which I guess like came before The Shining, because that movie was released in 1970, where Petronella comes down with the knife. It's just like, don't cut you, and just like basically, totally like unsure of herself, and it's just like she is giving. I mean, I guess she's like Wendy is giving Petronella in The Shining, but it's like, but it's the same, it's the same energy, and I kind of love it. So yeah, it was just it's nice that she was at least like in our consciousness enough that this is someone that we reference so often that she's still relevant, right up to her death, and like will continue to be relevant forever, because this movie is such a huge thing. So I'm it saddened that she left us, but I think in certain circumstances you have to celebrate a person's life and their legacy. So
100%.
So yeah, that's me being all schmaltzy.
I love seeing, because we covered MaXXXine even more recently, and then there was a clip floating around of Mia Goth on her press tour promoting the film and everything, and this predated also Shelley Duvall's passing, and she was sitting there talking about how Shelley Duvall is kind of like everything for her, how much she influenced her and made her want to be an actress, and how she doesn't think people talk about her enough. And I was like, again, this was like not posthumously like, oh, let's all now fondly remember. This was something like, no, attention must be paid. Let's appreciate the people we have while we have them. And I loved that about
now you're her. Wanting me to see like a version, like a movie that is like the making of The Shining with Mia Goth playing Shelley.
Oh my god, I just got goosebumps. Oh my god, like
who would play Jack?
Not Henry Thomas. Let me see.
Was he the one that played? He's the one that played him in Dogma.
Spoilers in the sequel. Yes, spoilers, folks. Sorry if nobody knew that.
I don't think it's a spoiler. The movie is 5 years old at this point.
Okay, and there's another actress who plays Wendy Torrance. Yeah. Shelley Duvall's Wendy Torrance in it. I won't thumbs up or thumbs down. She didn't. I mean, we're not talking about Dr. Sleep, but I will say, like, she didn't look like her. But I felt like, it was like moving in and out. Like sometimes it was the essence of Wendy was there, and then sometimes it just like completely wasn't there. Kind of typical of the film, but in its tone, you know, and its kind of alignment with the original Shining, which you know we can always unpack that whenever we discuss that film. I really liked
Doctor Sleep. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah, we'll do that at some point.
Yeah, there are definitely things to unpack with that movie, for better and for worse, I feel.
What's going on otherwise, you know?
I got bit by a dog.
What did you do to, like, it's like while you were working?
Yeah, while I was working, I was making my way through a gate. I know. I was making a delivery. I opened a gate as per the customer's instructions, and before I knew it, I'm usually really good about like opening a gate, seeing a dog or sensing a dog or hearing a dog or whatever, and immediately shutting it. The second I opened the gate, there was barking, and then there was a bite on my right hand. And I was like, whoa! And I pulled my right hand away because I was freaking out, and it went right for my left. And I started to scream, ow, 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 because I didn't want to pull my left hand away. Mm-hmm. And now I'm on antibiotics. And it's, you know, it's great.
What kind of dog? Was it like a Chihuahua?
No, it was a larger dog, like larger than a beagle, but it all happened so fast. I didn't even make eye contact with the owner, who was there and did not apologize, because we can't be held accountable for the things that, you know, the animals in our charge do, because that might make us liable. And I was like, oh Jesus. So
that's what they said, or
no, they didn't even say anything. They just came out and told me, oh, it's fine. He doesn't have anything. He bites me all the time, is what I got from the owner. That was the most sympathy I got.
Sue. Go on, Judge Judy. Those, like, she loves those cases where, you know, you got the...
Well, they might end up on Judge Judy now, because I didn't know, I'm the third person in that week to get bit by that dog. So finally, my manager put forth the order to basically kind of cancel any orders to that address at any of it's an apartment complex, to any of the apartments. So hopefully that customer, because this woman who had the dog, she was not the customer. Mm-hmm. The dog owner was a different person. So hopefully the owner now will take issue, now that she has to go pick up her deliveries at another address, and hopefully there will be some kind of like follow-up there, because I have no rights. Like they said, unless you need medical attention, there's nothing we can do. And then once I got the medical attention, I could go right back to work. So
your employer said that?
Yeah. There's nothing more they can do to her except for cancel. Like
that's the thing where you have to do it yourself. Like you have to go outside of the borders of your employment to seek legal.
I have so much on my plate right now. Maybe, but that's why I'm kind of hoping like the baton will be passed now to the people who share her living space. Because
you gotta hold pet owners like that accountable.
I was so shocked at the moment. I couldn't even tell her anything because I was so shocked that it happened. The only regret I have is that I wish I could have said, "Listen, I didn't do anything wrong, and your dog bit me. That's not okay. Mm-hmm. You need to do something about this." And I couldn't even find the presence of mind to do that. So if anybody's listening and has ever had anything happen to them like that, I hope, you know, you can understand where I'm coming from in terms of just like it being jarred. Like the saddest thing was it didn't, like it hurt at the moment, and I was looking, it only broke a little bit of skin, which is why I have, you know, to take antibiotics and stuff on my knuckle. But the thing that made me sad was it bummed me out for the rest of my shift. There was another dog like 90 minutes later, because I continued my shift, and another dog was there, sweet as pie, and I got scared. You know, I was like, and I thought, oh no, is this going to be my life from now on? Am I going to flinch at dogs? But the next day, I went back to work, and literally I was chased by a tiny little white yappy dog. Yeah. That was nipping at my shoes, not my legs, but my shoes. Mm-hmm. And I just turned around and looked at it, and I didn't even flinch. And I just said, "Hello, I'm a friend." And it just kept barking at me. And the owner came and collected it and said, "I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "No problem." And I just went on. I was like, okay, no PTSD. Grateful, you know? So that's what I was more worried about, like my emotional well-being. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm good, but you're just reminding me of the time I went traveling in India, where
okay,
it's not that pompous, I promise, but it was towards the end of my trip because I was there for 2 months, and one of the last stops was Agra, which is where Taj Mahal is. And I arrived there, like I got off a bus late at night, and the minute I got off, like all these dogs, like pack of stray dogs, just like started to target me, and they chased me, and I was terrified. And locals were just like, run, because they don't go after the locals, but I was like running for my life. Like this was like how many years ago? I don't know. It was like 22. It's just like 16 years ago. Just running for my life with like my backpack with like everything, and just like trying to like get into like safety. And I'm never afraid of dogs. But this was just like there were so many of them, and they're so fast, and it was just like I don't know what they're going to do to me.
Yeah.
And that I forgot all about that until you just
oh my God,
awoke that memory.
But, I don't run from dogs anymore, because they literally trained us that like if you run, that's basically like giving them a primal cue to chase you. Whereas if you stop, like I did with the little yappy dog, I literally stopped and then it stopped. But it's also not,
I just don't know what would have happened, because like they kind of like really like approached me quickly. So it just like did I do the right thing, or just like was the running? But even
How did you get away?
Like I ran until I found a place like a building or something that I could take refuge in. And normally, like, because I had been through like many places in the country at that point, and there was always dogs, and they were friendly enough. But something about Agra, like if you ever go to India, Agra is like I try to be diplomatic here. It's not the best. I mean, it's like the Taj Mahal's there, and that's really the only reason to go there. But everything else is like probably the worst of like that the country has to offer. But even like the next day, I like during daytime, I like went out and I saw like dogs like chasing after other people. So I don't know if it was the same dogs or just like the dogs in like the dogs run Agra. So anyway.
Oh my God.
The dog stuff. Everything's good though, right now and in the present day. Our Kickstarter campaign for Macabre, which is the short film that I'm working on with my good friend Eric Champney. We've got that all set up. We got verified. We got approved. The pre-launch is up and ready now. At the time of this release of this episode, the campaign starts 1 week. So the next Tuesday. It's really exciting, and it's just like a huge weight off my shoulders, because it was just like there was so much work involved in doing it. I mean, like I haven't really been active on YouTube, just like making videos and stuff, because I've been active like preparing this, like just this is like my next video. This is like it's just like a bigger version of that. So it's been really exciting. It's a relief that it's moving forward. And yeah, if you're listening to this, like go to Kickstarter, check it out. Macabre. It's probably searchable on there. It's just going to be the pre-launch page if you're looking right now, but you can notify or get notified when it launches. And and social media as well. All the big three: the Instagram, the Twitter, and the Facebook. At Macabre the movie. Macabre.
Spelled MACABRE.
Macabre. I mean, like that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to call it Macabre, but it was just like no, because it's like I guess the American pronunciation is macabre.
I saw
which is
Nicole Kidman's in the other. She said macabre.
She said macabre, but she's as British in that as they come,
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure in Australia, they say
I don't know.
macabre.
Huh. I mean, she does her research. Like that's an immersive actress. So I don't know.
We need to cover maybe not the others, but we need to.
I would love to cover. What, you don't want to cover the others?
I want to cover The Shining, but before we start getting into it, I want to say thank you to some of my Patreon supporters. So to my Michael Myers tier, thank you to Kyle Beard, Sam Levy, Ellie Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Bruce the Genetic Jackhammer Rando, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, Brandy Beebe, and then Ghostface, Eric Champney, who I mentioned already, doing the movie with, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, and Garrison Nichols. Thank you very much to all of yous. Thank you to everyone supporting on Patreon. And thank you to Jason Voorhees Gallotello, our podcast editor. Forgot to say thank you to him the last time, and I always I always feel guilty at the end, like, oh, sorry, Jason.
He knows you care.
And yeah, if you're new to the Cherry Picker, or if you've been here for a while and you want to support us, you can head over to my Patreon page, patreon.com/ZackCherry, ZACKCherry. You get early access to all episodes at any tier. If you are supporting on Freddy Krueger tier, you get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark. And then next month for August, what are we doing? It's not horror.
Right. It's been heavily requested.
Yeah.
We're covering, if you can believe it, the 007 franchise.
Yes.
Which I've only seen 3, the first 3. So it's going to be homework time to absorb these things.
I'm just a slave driver, just making you watch all these movies.
You love to burn through a franchise. We're taking our time with the horror.
yeah, but you're really good at marathoning things.
I am.
Yeah, I can't do that. I
haven't even started screening them for the pod yet because I am planning. I mean, I'm reserving them, placing them on hold at my library, and I have a stack of 8 waiting for me when it's complete. And then I have a friend who owns all of them, who I'm going to go watch them with, and I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I like finding my way that way. Yeah.
So, what's The Shining all about?
Well, let me turn this over to my co-host. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Tonight's tale follows a troubled family in an isolated hotel over the winter season, where a sinister presence triggers the father into madness and violence, while his young son sees horrific forebodings from the past, and perhaps the future. The Shining. That's how she would have done it. That was on.
And I mean, for all the people who haven't seen The Shining, where can they watch it?
Oh, I just put my phone down. It is currently streaming on AMC Plus, aka Shudder, with subscription, or you can rent it individually on the usual suspects: Apple Plus, Prime, and YouTube. But if you are a collector, and we all should be a little bit, particularly with this movie, the physical media, the most recent, most significant release was a 4K Blu-ray combo that was released in 2019, has a 5-star video quality rating. Yes. And on both discs, the 4K and the Blu-ray.
Both dicks in 4K.
We'll talk about that. And then 4-star audio rating, which is perfectly serviceable. There are multiple editions that are available, though, with 2 steelbook covers from Best Buy alone. So pick the one you want. Find the cover you like. Go for it.
Best Buy, they're not around. They don't do physical media.
No, not anymore, but these were released. You can still find them on eBay and whatnot. Okay, so I had the yellow one.
Well,
the yellow one that looked like the maze.
Yeah, I got the yellow because it's like, and it cost me a pretty penny too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It fetched a pretty penny, and let me tell you, I take umbrage with that 5-star rating because I put that 4K in, and I don't know if I've watched it on 4K ever until like this previous time that I watched it, but it did the same thing when I was watching Bride of Chucky. I don't know if I mentioned it in that episode, where it just started to like freeze up, and more so towards the end of the movie. And I just like, is this the disc thing? Is it like a manufacturer, or is it like a Zack
player
thing?
Do you clean
but
your
I don't.
player?
No, not really. But I don't have those issues with like other discs. So.
But 4K might be more fragile than Blu-ray. I don't know.
It definitely is. But
okay.
you
need to clean your player or get a new one, maybe.
I'm not gonna do that. Look who you're talking to.
Well, you can stream it and it'll look gorgeous that way.
Well, it comes with the Blu-ray as well, so I can watch that. And okay. I don't know, maybe the next time I watch it, I'll do the 4K and see if it freezes up again. It only was really towards the end, and at that point it's like, what do I do? Like fast forward, because it kind of freezes, so you have to like strategically maneuver, so you like press play at a part where you're not really missing it. And it happened like, I think it was like right when she goes into the hall or the big room, and she's like finding the papers, and it's all like the no play, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. And it's just like why are you freezing at this integral moment? I mean, every moment in this movie is integral. And then it was freezing up again when he was chasing old Danny boy through the maze. And I was just like, come on. It's just like, there's like 3 more minutes. Just do it.
That's upsetting. Well, my Blu-ray was pristine as far as the visual was concerned. And I don't have like a particular ear for audio. I can't go like, I don't like that. It worked. I had no complaints.
Yeah, that's good.
So there you go.
Do you remember the first time you saw The Shining?
No, it was another one. Can I also say, like, just as a tiny little tangent, this is like the period of the 80s, like the 70s, 80s crossover is, I think, my favorite to watch. There's something about it that is so comforting to me because, like I said, it's the decade that I came up, but I don't know, it's something about it just feels so home to me. The Thing is similar in that regard, and the first Friday the 13th movie, like they all have that wonderful, still kind of like feathered hair, tale of the 70s feel, but they were just in, like season 1 Stranger Things, you know what I mean? Gorgeous browns, lots of browns.
There's something to be said for like that. I think we talked about it maybe in the Raising Cain podcast, where it's just sort of like the 80s passing the baton or passing the torch to the 90s, and that sort of like where everything kind of it looks, I don't know if it's that it looks 90s and has like an 80s mentality, or just like the opposite of that, or like from 70s to 80s. But yeah, there's definitely like Friday the 13th also, like the first one came out around the same time as this, so it's like all those movies that like they could be the 70s, but it's like the 80s. And now, like, I feel like from the late 2000s onwards, it's this big, like, amorphous blob where everything is, like, very slowly shifting into, like, what it is. But, like, if I watched, for instance, like, Dr. Sleep, which came out in 2019, and granted, I haven't seen it in a minute, but, like, to watch that and watch something that came out this year, or whatever, like I wouldn't really notice. Like everything kind of looks very similar nowadays. There's not really a distinct style from one decade to the next.
Maybe there needs to be some kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Hindsight, in order to kind of like recognize it, because I'm already starting to recognize it a little bit in the crossover from the late 90s into the 2000s, like a lot more a lot more bleached tips back then, and a lot of that's like purely aesthetic if you're looking at that. But I've always like once we hit kind of the 2000s, there was always that kind of there was a very jarring shift, and I think that a lot of that also had to do with 9/11, because I mean that changed the world, but especially it changed cinema, and there's like it's almost like this benchmark for just like a dramatic shift of everything, and I think that like from the 90s to the 2000s, that was really the last time that happened, because if you watch movies that like came out like mid to late 2000s and then watched movies like early 2010s, like there's not really, like they kind of blend. Like there's it's a very gradual shift. That's why when I say like this amorphous blob of content, it may seem more abrupt as time goes on, as we start to discover new styles, because a lot of the things that we did we're still doing. But I guess it also depends on maybe genre, or even just like age bracket, like what demographic is this being marketed to, which is still a relatively new concept. Like they didn't start making movies for teens until the 1950s, which is still really recent if you think about the history of the world. But I see what you mean. But okay, so to answer your question, I don't remember the first time I saw it. I do remember it being on the tele, when I was growing up, and I remember always kind of like dipping in and then dipping out. Steven Spielberg made a statement in one of the special features for this film that it's impossible to start a Kubrick film or to even come into a Kubrick film in the middle and stop watching. As a child,
I agree with that.
As a child, it was easy for me to drift away, but not like it was easy, but it was just kind of like, well, it's always on. So if I want to catch more of this later, but I have other things going on. I'm a child. I have Play-Doh and Lincoln Logs,
Well,
so.
there's something very like hypnotizing about Kubrick films. And I think that's why, like, I agree with that sentiment. Like you start watching something, no matter where you come in, but especially at the beginning, like you want to see the whole thing through to the end because you're just kind of like, stuck in this like kaleidoscope of just like these very centered shots looking down corridors, like looking at things. And I mean, I've seen it's a trend that I've seen pop up, like, especially in things a little bit more recently. And I've never seen it executed as successfully as it has been with Kubrick, especially in The Shining, because it's like, there's a way to do it. And I feel like the fact that we're in a very isolated setting, like the movie takes place in this hotel, there's so many interesting things to look at. Like it really kind of, it benefits, having that style of cinematography to have things very, very center focused, as opposed to, something where it's just like we're traveling in like, through scenery and landscapes to like all these places where everything is like, looks the same. And it's just like, it's kind of monotonous. It's kind of boring to look at. But with The Shining, I never feel that.
Well, especially, this is the thing, like from the beginning, like once I put it in, I was just kind of like, this is something I don't get often these days, especially with the more we tend to lean on CGI and lean on, and even just like on our phones, like as we're scrolling through and we see AI generated imagery and everything like that, it's begun to become harder and harder to impress us. Yet I can watch something like The Shining, and because I know that it's something that was really shot, there is something, and we've covered this before, but there is something about going that extra mile and achieving that shot and wondering, how did they do that? They didn't have the means to just kind of like punch it into a computer. Not that I'm belittling CGI artists and what they do, but when I think about just the opening shot and just catching like that beautiful reflection. Like I used the word pristine earlier, and that's exactly what I thought when I saw the reflection of what was above the water going below the water, and even the angles. It's this helicopter shot. Nowadays it would be a drone shot, and we wouldn't be surprised at all by how smooth it is. Helicopter shots were never smooth, and yet it feels as though we're gliding on a kite, or even, supernaturally following this family. We just happen to be tagging along with this family through this winding road, and the music, the disarray, just those chords are hitting all the perfect notes and all of the things surrounding them. I just thought, like, it gives me such a cinematic thrill that is a rarity today. Like I still kind of wait to be gripped by something where I'm just kind of like, where you can almost, you either lean forward to try and figure it out because it's so compelling, or you lean back just to kind of okay, there's a master at work. Let me just kind of drink it in and let it happen to me. And that's what happened just with the opening seconds of this opening credit sequence, which is another thing that I think we need to get back. Hook us with the opening credits, like find a way to engage us instead of so many movies just kind of hit the ground running and,
Yeah. What was we were talking about one a while ago, and it was sort of like bring back the opening credits. Was it maybe Urban Legend? I don't know. I'm just like pulling a title from out of the air. Because remember, it was like the rain coming down on the river, and there was like sort of like this orchestral, like this like choir of like voices, these like very like ethereal voices just like singing, and then it like, you know, comes to the winding road and her traveling down there. But it was, you know, all the like the names showed up on the screen. It's just like, we can do this. Like, you're setting a mood. It's just like there's atmosphere. We're doing something. It's just like, I don't know why you wouldn't want to showcase, you know, who's in this while you know, delivering something. Like, I've seen credits that are, you know, obnoxious, you know, in more recent things where they try to do that, and, you know, you don't want to pull focus, but I mean, there's a way to do it successfully, and I think that The Shining is a really good example of that.
They also, on one of the special features, I got to see some directors like Spielberg and Sidney Pollack and whatnot, more of these, you know, what's the word? Like these engineers of the craft also, because they know about, you know, like the lenses, and they talked about Kubrick's use of the wide lens as opposed to a long lens. A long lens is often used for a close-up, and all the background tends to kind of blur away, and it can give you focus. It, you know, it can, you know, kind of like really direct the audience, like, this is what's important, whereas Kubrick was such a fan in all of his films of a wide lens to make the environment just as consumable and just as important as the actor in the frame. It's like all of a sudden it creates, I don't know if this is the thing, because it I would call it immersive, but there's also something almost natural documentary landscape about it, like where there is some remoteness from what's going on. I'm not inside the experience of any of these people. I can sympathize with them and I can go on the ride with them. It's definitely enticing, but at the same time, it's almost like it's out of my hands. I just have to watch whatever's going to happen to these people. It's just, there's just no, it's almost existentialist. Like, there's no hope there, or not even no hope, but nothing to be done. You can't escape it. It's everything that happens at the end of this film, or certainly at the climax of this film, was fated to happen, and it's almost like you know it from the beginning. It
goes back to her line from the beginning of the movie where she's like, "Guess we'll just have to wait and see."
I just got goosebumps again.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, like, I feel it now, like, definitely, like, especially even with this screening, there were a lot of things that still jumped out at me that I was like, I don't know, I don't even know if I thought about that before, because this is, again, another one that, because what's on screen seems so valuable, I don't want to get used to it, so I watch it every few years, you know, like, I'll get an itch and then I'll scratch it by putting the film on and sitting and really giving it my undivided attention, because it's also, I'd say, it's not the kind of film that you're going to really get if you have your phone in your hand, you know, you need to surrender and just kind of like let it happen to
I gotta start. I mean, like, I was consumed by this one, but I do gotta start to get into what kind of grammar is that? I have to start getting into the habit of putting my phone in the other room before I watch certain things, because you know it does happen. But that's the thing. It's like there are movies that they don't hold your attention because the storytelling is just not compelling enough from one scene to the next. You know, there's no cause and effect that happens. Like, I've, you know, gone through this so many times. Whereas, like, with The Shining, this is a slow burn. There's no denying that. And this is not for everybody.
Yeah.
I know people who've said, like, you know, because this is either your favorite movie or you just don't get it. And I mean, this, like, for me, I don't know if this is my favorite, but this is definitely up there. Like, this is top 10, maybe even top 5. But it's one that you have to work for. And I don't think that slow burn necessarily means it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's a slow burn and nothing is really cohesive in a way that it's just like, that's not like actually steeping into whatever the drama or the atmosphere is as we go along, then it's just like, what's the point of making us wait and drawing this all out? You could have just like excised this bit from the movie, but I feel like this is a movie where every frame matters. And that's why, you know, you can watch a movie like The Shining, and even if you have your phone in your hand, you're not looking at it because it's just like, oh my God, this bit's coming up, and then that bit, and like, oh, and this is why that happens and what this means.
Yeah, and I think it does what a well-directed film does, which is it makes you feel, at least, if it doesn't really give it to you, if it doesn't really grant you insight to what are the priorities of the filmmaker. Like, I feel like I'm getting to know kind of like what interests Kubrick by where he chooses to put the lens, what he chooses to zoom in on, what he chooses to zoom out on, to reveal to me what he wants me to see first, and then what he wants to uncover. Like, and that's why, because it's not new material, or not a new situation per se, particularly the way it's depicted in the movie. There's nothing particularly just as far as the foundation, as far as like the elements of the plot, shall we say, like it kept making me think like, this is doing everything story-wise that I think Amityville Horror tried to do, and I'm talking about the OG one with Margot Kidder and James Brolin. In terms of just like, you know, unsuspecting family moves into a situation, unbeknownst to them, this new living space begins to inhabit the patriarch of the family and poison him against his family to the point where he's going to destroy them. Meanwhile, they're all kind of like getting little moments of losing their mind because the place is fucking haunted. But what sets it apart, because I don't think Amityville Horror has aged particularly well as far as its effect. You know, it was this huge hit in its time. Shining was not. And yet, but the Amityville kind of hit these, I guess, these sensationalistic beats that resonated with an audience and encouraged people to go there and chomp popcorn. I don't know, I've never tried to eat popcorn to this movie, and I don't think I would ever try. I would much rather, but the things that it offers me in the way of like the environments and in the way of like all the symbolism that you can read into it, the fact that you can feel like your subjective take on what you're perceiving is all your own, and somebody else who's sitting right beside you could be having a completely different experience. I don't think Amityville necessarily offers that. The Shining really, it's so dense visually and conceptually.
I mean, on the surface there's a lot more nuance to The Shining than there is to Amityville, and I mean a lot, because this is not just like moving into a house. This is like a job interview and occupation, and there's isolation involved. There's so many more layers, and like a movie like The Shining, because everyone does have their own interpretation of it. And I don't think I've like ever heard an interpretation of it. Like, I don't even bother to like. There's so many videos on YouTube. It's just like, this is what this means, and this is what this means, and it just like, I never watched that.
Room 237. I'm holding up,
never,
folks, for people who are listening.
Never seen it, and I don't know if I need to. Like, you know,
it's not necessary. It's more just kind of like interesting shit to chew on. I mean, some of it is very easily dismissible, I find, but some of it is interesting. I'm like, I never really thought of that.
I definitely have like watched things that are like, okay, that's an interesting theory, and this is an interesting theory, but you know, for me, it's more of like, it's just like psychologically what it means, and just sort of like how it kind of, you know, reflects on your own psyche and your own history and things like that. Because I feel like this is one of those like movies that, you know, really gets under your skin in a way, and like you can, you know, start to internalize a lot of like the terror that is happening in it. And it's just like, for me, it's such a unique experience, because like I grew up where it was like a situation where it was just like my mother and my stepdad and myself, and we would like, you know, go on a lot of these trips, and we would just be isolated alone. So just like there's always something that kind of like connects me to that, in a sense of just like what I grew up with my childhood. And, you know, that's probably around the time that I first saw this movie as well. So it's just sort of like, it's always connected with me that way. But I like movies like that. Like, I like things where people can have different interpretations, and I think that always works out the best. That's what makes the best horror movies. And you talk about how this was not well received in the day. When I think the Golden Raspberries, also known as the Razzies, started in 1980. Like, this was the first year. It might have been, but
I don't remember for sure, but you're probably
it was
right.
very early. And I know for sure, like, worst actress, worst director. I don't know if like worst picture was there. But I mean, yeah, this was a movie very much like The Thing that came out in '82 that was critically panned, and everyone was just like, you know, terrible performance by Shelley Duvall. And
God.
I don't know. What's interesting is that influence? Is that like people like, you know, like a critic will come forward and say, this is what this is. And then everyone kind of gloms to that idea. And they're just like, yeah. Because I mean, I feel like we still see that where like a movie will come out and it's whether it's like overly praised or just like overly hated. It just sort of like that becomes the narrative that is towed. And it'll be years later where that movie that's like, you know, given all this praise and being like, this was the best movie ever. And it's like, nobody talks about it anymore. But the movie that, you know, was like maligned and just like completely tossed away has that ongoing legacy. And I feel like, you know, with this genre especially, but I mean like with every movie, but especially horror, you have to give it that wide berth. Like, wait 10, 20 years to see what people are saying and reevaluate it. Like, there's been so many movies that I have reevaluated. Oddly enough, The Shining is not one of them, but I wasn't present in, like, I probably, the first time I saw this, I guess would have been, you know, maybe closer to like 2000 or, you know, like either very late 90s or early 2000s. So I was already like 20 years removed from it, so I never got that experience. Same with The Thing, of just like a time where it was a movie that was hated by people.
See, that's interesting because I think I saw it even before I saw Carrie, because I don't remember Carrie being on television a lot when I was a child. It didn't really enter. It was just kind of like a VHS cover for me for many, many years that I was scared of. And then when I finally saw the movie, I wept and, you know, and laughed and, you know, didn't expect to do either of those things in that movie, but and got scared. But with this one, I think something about, and it's true about Carrie too. I actually started identifying in a way that I never really did before, because these were two of Stephen King's first published books, you know, Carrie and The Shining, his properties. And both of them, it was interesting to me because with The Hook, it seemed like they set up with a compelling enough premise, just in a kind of like mortally accessible way. Like, you know, if you just talk about like a girl at school who's bullied and is humiliated by all of the other kids at her school, and then like there's prom pending and she's got like a religiously pious mother who abuses her. That's interesting in and of itself. I want to watch that movie. Then you give her telekinesis and get her learning about it and give her a way to push back when she's, you know, ostracized in a very public way. Then it's like, oh my God, there is nothing else like this. Same thing with The Shining. You've got like this family dealing with this kind of like fallout after, you know, there's an abusive transgression from father to son, and they're all going out to kind of like isolate. That is interesting enough.
I want to ask you then, because at the start of the episode, you mentioned that this was like a supernatural influence. And I mean, certainly the book, The Shining, as written by Stephen King, leans more towards the idea of supernatural. But then when you have Stanley Kubrick's version, which obviously strays heavily from the book, and Jack Nicholson's performance, it's, you know, the interpretation of the movie, or at least the way I see it, is that this was like, you know, pre-existing abuse, and this was more of just like it's the isolation that brought that out. And it was just sort of like, how do you take like this beast and put it in like the worst possible setting that is like not good for anyone, rather than like this idea where it's like, no, he's a good father, and you know, like it was the spirits that caused him to do it, which is, you know, probably more like Amityville. And I obviously Stephen King hates this movie, notoriously has hated it, and I mean, I think that it's a little petty. I think that he maybe is just a tinge jealous, because I would argue that the movie is better than the book, and that it's just one of those things where it's like Stanley Kubrick's vision of that was just such a greater experience And it was one of those things where he didn't want to admit it, and rightfully so, because like when you're an artist, when you're a creator of that magnitude and you make something and it's a completely different thing than what it is shown to be like on the screen, I would be pretty pissed off too. But it's like, I feel like it's one of those things where he doesn't want to admit it. Like he said that The Shining, like the Stanley Kubrick Shining, is like a Cadillac without an engine. Like it looks good, but it can't do shit.
See, okay, now I take issue with that statement because I don't believe that. I think it's too mindfully put together to be dismissed that easily. I would never call Kubrick's The Shining style over substance, which is probably another way to put it. I would call it substantive style for me. Because one thing that is missing for me that I remember getting, and I haven't seen this in years and years and years. I saw it, I don't even think I saw it in its entirety. I think I only saw the miniseries, like the back half of it, the second night that it aired. But I remember that was enough watching. There was something that I couldn't escape my head as we were moving through the climax for this particular screening. I just remembered a moment where Steven Weber's Jack Torrance has been chasing and hunting his child, and there's a moment where he drops, I don't remember if it's the knife or the axe, whatever weapon he's wielding, and he comes back as Jack Torrance, you know, this father who loves his son and who has completely, in his eyes, betrayed him again, only to the nth degree, and he never wanted to do it, and he just starts sobbing, and the child goes to him, Danny, and he holds on to him and just starts apologizing to him while he is choking through these sobs. And I remember being moved by that, and then all of a sudden, it all goes away, and there's the villainy again. And there was something so compelling about that. You know, I tend to gravitate toward the interpersonal, and that's where, if there is anything that I wouldn't say that I have against this movie, but anything that's just kind of like, oh, that'd be nice if that was there too. A little bit more of an arc for Jack Torrance as, you know, portrayed by Jack Nicholson and as filmed by Stanley Kubrick. I feel like from the get-go, when he is driving, I feel like I learned so much about Jack Torrance in this movie when they're driving in their little VW bug, and he's talking about the Donner Party, and he's like, I know about that. They ate each other up. I saw it on TV. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. I know all about it. And Jack says, see? It's okay. He saw it on television. And he looks so perturbed and annoyed right off the bat, and I'm just kind of like, you're going to try to kill your family by the end of this. And
I never got perturbed. I got more like he was sort of amused by it, but more like maybe perturbed at her for like suggesting like, don't like, did he learn that from you, sort of thing? And it's just more just like, irritated, you dumb bitch, you know, you see, he saw it on the TV. Can you imagine like Chucky and Tiffany and Glenn in The Shining?
I mean, I would love it. I haven't caught up with season 3, but and I know Don Mancini is a huge fan. Obviously, there were tons of like allusions throughout the Chucky franchise to this property, this particular interpretation of the property. So I would love to see that happen at some point. I can't think of a thing to say, you know, like, but I thought there was another point where like, because again, they're in the house, but I started to wonder, like, just, you know, cinematically, like the story Kubrick's telling, the story that Jack Nicholson is interpreting. I'm just kind of like, so has the house already started to get to him while they're on the winding road? Because there is an argument to be made by that, but I also feel like, again, if there's a supernatural element, but again, a little tidbit that I feel we're granted really, really early is when he's sitting there. I think Wendy has just brought him breakfast and he's eating it. And she's talking about, and she's trying, you know, to just kind of like, well, you know, all you got to do, and I don't remember exactly the lines she says, but it's something to the effect of like, all you got to do is just, you know, let the place inspire you, and just put pen to paper or type on your typewriter, and the story comes, and it's all done, and that'll be great, right? And he just goes like, yep. That's all it is. And it's like, and again, like this agitated irritability that I feel like is reserved for people who really get on your nerves, that makes her seem more like a secretary than a wife. That is another thing. I see this Wendy and Jack. You can't, and I would never recast either of them. I think it's fascinating, but I will say, as far as believability, you can never convince me that Jack Torrance and that Wendy fell in love and were attracted to each other.
They have absolutely zero sexual chemistry.
Oh my God!
It's
from the get-go.
Yeah, but that's why it works so well. Like, cause she is terrified of him. Yes. Like, utterly terrified. Like, even when like things are fine, you could just feel it. The terror. And I don't even know if I have a favorite scene in the movie, because it's just like, every scene is just wonderful. Yeah. But the one where, she brings him I don't know if she brings him a sandwich, or she says that she's gonna, like, why don't I bring some sandwiches later and you'll let me read something. When he's typing, and that's where he's just like full on like irritated. He's just like, we're gonna set a few ground rules here. He's just like, whether you hear me typing,
yes,
or whether you don't fucking hear me typing, whatever the fuck I'm doing, Now, why don't you start now, but getting the fuck out of here? And she's just sort of like, okay, yeah, like, sure, like, she's just taking it, and like, you feel there's almost like a level of comedy to it as well, because like, you feel terrible for her, but at the same time, you're just like, is this satire? Like, is this like, why is she? I mean, like, it's just like, there's nothing funny about like a battered wife or anything, but it's just like, there's a level to it, and I think maybe because they have absolutely zero sexual chemistry, that it's like, what is the shtick here? Like, what is their thing?
It makes me wonder, like, again, it's not the Jack Torrance of the book. I feel like there's much more to his alcoholism and to his rage. Yeah. Like, we get much more back, even just in the way of backstory. Like, we learn it wasn't just him and Danny, it was him and a student, and that's why he got fired and all of that. And there's even more tension. I started to reread the book recently because I'm trying to get back into books, and I have never finished Stephen King's The Shining. And it's not, all the interpersonal stuff is there. It's whenever we get back into the hotel and he starts going into the history of it, I just get lost. And I've gotten about a third of the way through the book, and we keep going back to the history, and I'm like, I don't care. I love the little inner, like, monologues that they have, or the exchanges that they have. Sometimes they'll just write a page of dialogue between two characters, and it is fascinating. But anyway, I started rereading it, and I actually stopped because I knew I was going to be comparing it too much, because again, that interpersonal layer is definitely there, and I didn't want to hold this book, like, accountable for that. Instead, so what I ended up perceiving instead was Kubrick's Torrance family is one that is kind of like rooted in this horrible, hideous, abusive cycle, and I feel like you're right. It does seem like the hotel really, he's a prime candidate for it, and the hotel almost kind of like, well, here's a great guy. Let's use this guy. And also, maybe there's something, if there is a supernatural element, maybe it's about like attracting people like Jack, who are easily corruptible. Mm-hmm. All it takes is a little whisper in the ear.
What we needed, you'll love this. What we needed was a House on Haunted Hill 99 style thing, where the hotel sends an email to him, or like it through an employment agency, like, pulls up his name, and then he comes in, and it's just like, I don't know how I got it just fell into someone's lap, and they sent it.
But it was it was always destined to be. But also, another thing that jumped out at me that didn't usually, I don't think I've thought this thought before, but it was when he, it's right after, sorry, a little tangent, because you talked about, like, about favorite moments and stuff like that. I think I have a favorite shot.
Okay.
And it is actually a favorite moment. It's the shot when Wendy is standing there at the desk with Jack and they're arguing or whatever. And but oh no, he woke up out of his nightmare. That's what it is.
And he's just looking like all disheveled.
And and he's all disheveled. And he's telling her, "I know, I cut you into little pieces." And it's the most. I'm kind of convinced that like he gives a shit about his family. Yeah. And it's the only time I also noticed, because Wendy and Danny keep returning to red and blue. They're always like, and some would argue red, white, and blue, and it's about the USA and everything like that. But I noticed just like those primary colors, and Wendy's doing yellow every now and then too. And I'm just like, primary colors. And the only time I see Jack or noticed Jack in anything even approaching primary colors was when he woke up from that nightmare, which is the outfit he wears basically for the rest of the movie. But it's like a burgundy and like a navy, you know, like so like a little bit darker, a little bit more complex than his, you know, loving, doting wife and his, you know, sweet, innocent yet troubled son. But anyway, he wakes up. And then in walks Danny, because he's had his experience in room 237, and he's got, you know, his thumb in his mouth and everything like that. And Wendy is trying to tell him, like, leave us alone, because she hasn't perceived what's going on yet.
You did this.
Yeah, she goes to Danny, but it's the moment right before that where she's holding Danny because she realizes something's happened. And it's the shot from, like, we're just kind of, like, over Jack's head or his shoulder, you know, like, behind him. And you just see her holding Danny. And it's almost imperceptible, but it's totally perceptible. It's Wendy's crane of the head to Jack as she starts to put it together. Like, because at first it's like, what happened? My poor child, who could have done? And the music, it all starts winding up a little bit, and it's exquisite. I just kind of, I literally felt myself going, as it was going on. It was amazing.
Now you got me thinking about, like, when Danny, I guess, like, off screen finally tells her that there's a woman that attacked her, and she comes, like, running into the gold room,
right?
And there's no apology or anything. She's just like, so this is what happened, like, you know, sorry that I accused you of you know, beating the shit out of our son, but just like, it's like, you were right, like, there was none of that. It was just like that. But his line was just like, what does he say? He's like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Also, okay, does the glass disappear? Because he was drinking, and then she comes in, and all of a sudden the guy, Lloyd, the bartender, is no longer there. But is the drink? I can't remember. Did she just not see it, or is it missing? I don't remember if they even show it.
I'll have to watch it again. But I mean, like, there is no, I mean, it's supernatural alcohol, or it's all in his head. I don't know.
Or like, it's a hallucination. What do you believe? Do you have a belief as far as, like,
well, okay, so are we just ignoring Dr. Sleep canon then?
Yeah, just this film.
I mean, I think that there's obviously it's haunted because it's not just him that's seeing it. Like
sure.
You know, obviously Danny is seeing the woman, and the woman attacked him, and then Wendy is seeing all the ghosts towards the end. So I mean, that's the thing. It's just like, it's open to interpretation. I'm just there for the ride. I'm not really thinking. I think it's like, it's a matter of, like, here's just this, like, horrible person who's come to this hotel with his wife and kid that also happens to be haunted, and it's just sort of like exacerbating the toxicity of that that union, that familial union. So I don't know if there's, like, see, that's the thing. Now you're getting me to think, because they unlock the freezer, they let him out. Like, what are the things? So I mean, I don't care. I just have a good time with it. It's not, you know, it's not like Scream where I'm just like, everything has to be so precise and logical. Sure. Like with this, and just like, I'm okay, because the story is sort of, it does have that almost like surreal vibe to it. I would say this does as well, where it's just, you know, you don't know what is real, what is not. And I think in cases like that, where you have a story about someone slowly going mad, it's okay to kind of include the audience in on that journey. Like you talked about, like, what is our perspective? Are we with them? Are we seeing it through their perspective? Or are we just sort of like outside visitors? So, I mean, I like that. If, like, our main character is kind of going crazy, I want to have that confusion as well.
Yeah, in terms of interpretation, again, I tried to take it, you know, as the tidbits were being dropped as the film was progressing myself. And one of the things, because I remember hearing a lot of theories around, like, you know, Kubrick's alleged involvement with the making of the moon landing film, and that's why Danny's wearing the little sweater and everything like that. And I tried not to let that influence me, and I thought, well, what else could it mean just within the confines of, you know, maybe the symbolism of this film? And I just asked a question: could the space thing with Danny's sweater, and also with the tang, people often reference the tang in the pantry, if they are allusions to space travel, because they were synonymous with space travel, could it be more about exploring other territories once we've exhausted the resources of our own? Space travel being the next step of colonialism, because there's also a lot of Native American imagery. The one that stood out to me that I had never noticed before is when Danny's approaching room 237 on foot, not on the bike. He's as he's moving toward the door, behind him on a perpendicular wall to the hallway, there's a photograph of what looks like an indigenous little girl, and it just kind of felt like these images of the past, like still in 2D that hadn't quite, you know, he hadn't quite really encountered them first. He saw the little girls at a distance and everything like that, but hadn't really interacted with them. So this was going to be his first one-on-one interaction. Or was he who did he interact with first? Was it the woman in 237 or the twins when they were like finally talking to him, like, come play with us, Danny, with the blood?
The first instance was when he, like, day one, when he was bombing the world, as Jack said.
Sure.
And he was like, you know, doing the darts, and then they were standing there and turned around and walked out.
Right. Yeah. But then after that, did he see them with their tableau of, like, you know, their deaths after he met the woman in the bath?
Oh yeah.
I thought so.
That happens relatively early.
Because with the woman, that always feels like the first actual interaction, like the regarding of each other. It's like we're still strangers. Well, they're just leaving me alone.
We don't actually see the interaction between him and the woman.
But there's a definite interaction because of the marks on him and everything. So, okay. Yeah. Because that's another thing is I've heard other people, like, say that Danny is the one who opens the pantry door, who don't believe there's anything supernatural going on. Danny's the only one who could and would, because whatever it is that whatever psychosis he sees his father going through, he wants it to kill him. And I'm like, all right, that's a belief too. Okay. But I don't know. I kind of feel like,
so like he wants it to kill him, or because there's, and I suppose this is I don't know if this was in the book or not. I don't remember, but it's definitely in Dr. Sleep, or it's implied there that Tony is Danny from the future.
Right. Spoiler for Dr. Sleep, but yeah.
5-year-old movie at this point.
5-year-old movie.
We're talking about The Shining.
Even older.
And I don't even think, and I wouldn't even call it a spoil. Like, it's not a moment that's just like, oh my God, you didn't, like a big plot twist that came out of there.
I mean, it didn't blow my mind, but when it happened, I was like, oh, well, that's a decision to make. Yeah. It's been done in other properties, and I think I preferred it there, but okay. Like,
But I'm assuming that was the case, because that's what was always the reason behind Tony, is that Tony was future Danny, just kind of like guiding him through and giving him like the foresight to just like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and pushing the parameters of his Shining, as it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I like to lean more into, like, I don't know. I've never known what it's like to sit through this movie and deny that anything that's happening has some kind of supernatural, like, or everything that's happening has no roots in supernatural. I've never watched it through that lens. It always leans in that direction for me, because also it's. I actually agree with you in terms of, like, I kind of don't need a definitive way to watch it. Like, I don't need a lens to watch the movie through. I do enjoy it happening to me, because then things occur to me. Like, one of the things that I really appreciated about the exchange once Jack goes into that restroom, the red, kind of coral red and white restroom with Delbert Grady, that I've dreamt about many times. I always find myself in that restroom. I don't like it, but it obviously had an impact on me when I was a child. But when he goes in there, there's something cyclical, again, that word, about his conversation with Delbert, because yes, it's like Delbert Grady is loading the cannon, as it were, if Jack Torrance is the cannon, to be destructive. But it also feels like there's this weird snake eating its own tail, where they're exchanging identities, and where because doesn't Delbert Grady tell him, no, you've always been the caretaker.
You always were the caretaker, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, no, you were, but there's this hypnotic thing, this like feverish.
Well, because he's like, it's like, I know you. Yeah. You're the guy who went and hacked up his wife and two little girls.
Right. And I feel like everything about that exchange
he corrected them.
Everything about that, yes, everything about that exchange, I feel, is to just kind of like loosen his grasp on what his perceived reality is, and to start buying into the things that are being whispered into his ear. Because that was another thing that stood out to me. Like, even while he's sitting there drinking with, while Jack is sitting there drinking with Lloyd, saying things like "white man's burden," and referring to Wendy as the old sperm bank upstairs. It's almost like the hotel is offering him detachment from his feelings and from his responsibilities, from his accountability, and just kind of like praising him and saying like, "Oh no, your money's no good here, sir. Like, everything is about, you're the important one. Like, it's everything that kind of like the weakest parts of you need to hear in order for like this evil thing to take over."
Well, it's almost, it goes back to when we were talking about Session 9, where it's sort of like there's this evil that exists inside everyone, and it's just like, how is that exploited? It's not necessarily that like there's some sort of possession or anything, but it's just like, how does this like this supernatural influence get into your ear and get you to do things that you wouldn't normally do? And I like that. That's kind of like a narrative that I can follow, because that's creepier than anything. And it was creepy with that movie, and it's creepy to think about it here too, because it definitely does feel like it's almost like the hotel is offering him gifts, and it's sort of like, oh yeah, you're it's like, oh my God, you're so hot, you're so like, look at you. You're a great writer.
Yeah, puff him up. So he'll want, because those are the things, again, it's almost like the sirens just kind of like beckoning you to the rocks. It's ultimately the thing that's going to destroy you, but it'll connect, but also will oddly like connect you with this amorphous cloud of consciousness, which is the Overlook Hotel, or housed in the Overlook Hotel.
Okay, so I already mentioned House on Haunted Hill. Of just like this supposed how did he get the job interview in the first place? But when we talked about House on Haunted Hill, you asked me a very specific question about the button, as you put it at the end of that movie, where we see Jeffrey Rush and Famke Janssen's characters in this sort of this weird thing at the end where they're now in the history, like that went back to when like the asylum was burned down. And it's like, the question is, were they always there, or has the house now consumed them?
Right.
That they're now trapped there forever. And I don't remember what the conclusion I came to, but I brought up, it's like The Shining, and you had a reaction to that was very strong, because you're not a fan of House on Haunted Hill. But the end of this movie, it's just like it kind of poses that question where we zoom in on the we push in on the photo from like the July 4th party of 1921, was it?
I think so.
Yeah, and there's Jack, front and center, and it begs the question, like, so was he always there? Is this sort of like a reincarnation thing and like a cyclical thing where it just like he keeps coming back, or like now that he's dead, he's like outside and like frozen, that he's just sort of like, it's almost like on Big Brother when like a house guest leaves and then they're their image, like, I guess it turns black and white or it disappears or whatever, but just like all of a sudden Jack materialized in this photo on the wall.
I mean, what I liked about that, again, like kind of giving over to the ambiguity of it, I really actually, because I picked my brain for about a half a second wondering, so what do I think that means? And I just kind of thought, time is a construct. It's a human construct. It doesn't exist. He could have been there the whole time. He could still be going through everything that he's going through in the house. He could be, that's what, time travel is not literally like, okay, we're going to go back to this time and time is finite. And we're going to, no, he could be, his consciousness could be dipping into all of it. And that's why it is so imperceivably, or how about this? So perceivably imperceivable. I love, one thing that the Room 237 documentary pointed out to me that I did not notice on my own were the inconsistencies with the hotel itself as far as the structure. People will turn a corner that they have turned before, and all of a sudden it leads into a different room. There's the scene with "You're distracting me," where there's this chair that is established behind Jack in the shot on him. We go to Wendy's face while she's reacting to him, and all of a sudden, when we go back to his reaction, the chair is gone. And then we go back to Wendy's reaction, and then we go back to him, the chair is back again. And a lot of people believe that it was done intentionally to kind of like, I guess, disarm the audience, to kind of like get them like, wait, nothing really exists. It was just another reason why I don't really take issue with Jack getting out of the pantry, whether it's a supernatural, if there is a supernatural entity there and it can move the furniture around, why can't it open a pantry door if it wants to, if it can release blood on a particular floor, like, then why not?
I don't buy that. I think that it's just like, we know how high stress those shoots were. Right. So, it might just be a thing that, like, even going back to, like, Halloween 4 with, like, it was so late and we just grabbed the mask and we didn't know there was the pink mask with the white hair and the director was just like, shoot it, and then we wrapped and, someone noticed, like, that's not him, or, whatever I do think there are theories where I definitely align with you as far as that. I'm just kind of like, okay, you're paying more attention to it as an audience member revisiting it 36 times than he did as a filmmaker who had a time clock and everything like that. But I think there were certain things that make sense also, like, disorienting things, because certainly this is a film that disorients and enchants. It does benefit to have that disorientation sometimes, but I'm just going by, like, the fact that on record they did X number of takes for certain scenes that went up to, like, almost like 100 or over, but it's I know more about the disorientation of the hotel, like at the beginning with the office where he has the interview, where it's just sort of like, how is there a window there where, like, where that would be, there wouldn't be a window, so it's sort of like this impossible, it's almost like the Halloween Resurrection Myers house, where it's just like, what, who designed this, what's going on there? That wouldn't be there.
Right. Yeah. Or even the Evil Dead house, where all of a sudden, or Evil Dead 2 rather, where all of a sudden there are caverns. There's like,
even in the first Evil Dead, when, like, we're outside and it's just like going around, like, how big is this thing? It's like, I forget what it's called. I missed it, but it was the one with Kevin Bacon and Amanda Seyfried, where they move into a house. I guess she's his wife, and he's just like has the measuring tape, and he's like, this is smaller on the outside than it is on the inside.
Oh my God, I didn't even see that movie, but I know exactly.
I don't know what it's called.
About. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I did have a vital question for you.
Yes.
Does Wendy Torrance of this particular interpretation strike you as a particular ghost story and horror film addict? The way Jack professes she is in his job interview.
A confirmed ghost story and horror addict. I buy it.
Yeah.
I think, I think that she's like she can cut loose a little, like when they're doing the tour of the hotel, and she's like, wow, we can really get a party going in here, and then the guy's just like, yeah, no, we don't keep liquor on the premise. Right. And then Jack, which is, I love his delivery here, he's like, we don't drink.
Also, I mean, the fact that she expresses that her favorite colors are pink and gold, but she's also like this horror film addict, almost makes her a little more twisted to me. Like, she's not like, I like black.
I think she's just she's an unconventional woman. I think that there's a lot of layers to her and a lot of like surprises that you probably wouldn't know. Like, we're just sort of seeing one aspect of her life. But that's the brilliance of her performance, is because like I see a woman in there who's just like there's so much potential, and yet it's all being wasted on this like guy who's gonna kill them, and I can absolutely see a scenario where she is a confirmed ghost story and horror addict, and it's just one of those things where. He like or you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe he just said that because he's just trying to charm the guy into giving him the job, or just
I was wondering that, but at the same time, you know what, bringing up Amityville again, I could totally see Wendy being one of those people in the 70s who would have read the Amityville horror book cover to cover, and maybe even would have wanted to like go visit before Danny was born, of course, go visit and just kind of see like, ooh, spooky. But I also one little tidbit that I would have loved to just kind of confirm it for me in my imagination is when she's sitting there watching television with Danny, and we get that wonderful pullback shot where we see the television that is not plugged in at all to anything.
It's in the middle of the room,
when Wi-Fi didn't exist. And, but she's just sitting there watching TV with him, and they're watching, it wasn't it the news? I think they were watching the news report.
No, they were watching a movie. The news report is when she's in the kitchen.
That's
and then
right.
They're watching a movie. It's some old movie. I forget what it is. And then they're watching Roadrunner when they're in the apartment.
Yes.
And when she like, I'm gonna go check on Dad, and she grabs the bat.
Wait, there's a Roadrunner theme song. I've never heard that before.
I think it's it's like Roadrunner.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And I've never heard that ever.
Roadrunner. Are you telling me that this is one of those what do you call it? Mandela effect? Well, no, because it exists. We hear it here, but or Polybius, or what was the arcade machine that like everyone says it was there, and it just like it there's no record of it ever being anywhere.
I mean, maybe there's a record, but maybe it is a little before my time. Maybe maybe I'm not quite as old as I think I am, because I was around for like the Bugs and Tweety show. I remember that, and Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes, and not being able to understand why are there two names for that. Yet I have two names, so I guess it makes sense. But I remember watching what I would have loved is after she kind of like excuses Danny, because I get why she's watching whatever it is that she's watching with Danny in the room. But if as soon as he goes off to see his dad, if she would have just got up and like turned the channel and Night of the Living Dead would have been on or something, and she would have been like, oh, just settle in and enjoy the afternoon the afternoon horror flick. And if it would have been classic.
So okay, here's a question. So is Mrs. Elrod confirmed horror and ghost story addict in Halloween 2?
I mean, oh my God. I mean, if what's her name is as nonplussed at the fact that, like, I guess he just decided to start beating her, then, like, maybe she's a lot like Wendy Torrance. Probably then. I don't know. Same era.
Yeah.
But
that's the plot twist. Mrs. Elrod is Wendy. It's just like in a time travel situation.
She got away. She married someone else.
Went back in time and then grew old and
time is a human construct. So, and Danny's just away because he recovered after he like ran around that maze like he was running from dogs at the Taj Mahal. Yeah. But but I did. Oh yes, go ahead. Ask.
No, what did what?
Just like there were two things that I just wanted to point out that I think are also kind of like really, really, I don't know if scintillating is the word for me. I guess cinematically they're scintillating. They're like potboiler moments for me, where everything melts away and all I have is the movie that I'm watching. And they're both conversations. One is Ann Jackson playing the... What is she? Like a social worker or a nurse or a psychologist? Whatever she is. The woman who visits Danny in the beginning when he has his episode. Yeah. Ann Jackson, really, really good actor, trained at the Actors Studio. And is sitting there having the exchange with Wendy and just listening. And Wendy's got that cigarette that's just burning, smoldering.
Just the ash. I love the meme where it's just kind of like going on forever.
Yeah, I love that too. I posted it in my story the day that we knew that Shelley passed, as you know, as a memoriam. But I just love that exchange that they have, because you can feel absolutely like the tension has already been established cinematically as far as like what the camera is doing, the photography, not just the cinematography, but the photography that is at play through Kubrick's lenses, and the score and all of those wonderful elements. But now all we have are two people in a room talking about something that happened, and this woman Wendy, who is yet to kind of like make her peace with it. She's obviously unsettled. She's uncomfortable sharing it, but she is also finding an odd comfort in admitting that it happened and kind of like voicing whatever it is that she told herself to be okay with it, and almost kind of like listening to herself, wondering like, it is okay, right? Sure it is, you know? Like,
yeah, like she has to convince herself of it, because she's completely unsure, and the woman, doctor, therapist, whatever, psychologist, is not saying a thing. She's just sitting there. She's just taking it all in, and I love that, because it's like it enhances everything that Wendy's saying, because it's just like, no, you're full of shit. You're lying to yourself. You're a nervous wreck. This is not a good situation. Like that is great. That is great storytelling. That is great dialogue, because she's not saying anything and she's doing so much, and it goes back to this thing where like, dialogue is the last resort. Like the written word in anything should be the last resort. Like especially with anything visual, you want to convey as much information as possible with just what you see on screen than actually like what you hear, or you know, like words and voices saying things, because that's like, that tells you everything, and that tells you like this woman is probably looking at her and being like, Jesus Christ, like you've lost your mind, and you're a battered wife, and this child, like if this is like, you know, this is a woman who works for child services or something, it'd be like, we're going to take Danny away from this situation, because this is clearly not good.
Right. There's the text, and then there's the subtext, which is, there's so many layers of it, which makes it utterly believable, which makes me angry that Shelley Duvall was even up for a Razzie that year. But the other one is the exchange between, we haven't talked about him yet, but Dick Hallorann, played by Scatman Crothers, who I love. And just the exchange that they have once, you know, he basically kind of like shines to Danny to ask him if he wants any ice cream, and then finally asks him, you know, like, so you want some ice cream? And he's been very friendly up until then. That was another thing I noticed, was a lot of people speaking in tones of voices that don't sound like theirs. Even Wendy does it, like when they're watching the TV, just kind of like, okay, but don't bother your father. It's like everybody is almost kind of playing at being the person they're expected to be. And then eventually every single person gets a moment where they're completely facadeless, and this is a moment where, because he's so friendly and so agreeable and everything like that, and talking about, he's like, what kind of what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? He's like, chocolate. Then chocolate it shall be. You know, it's just so wonderful and obliging. And then all of a sudden when they're sitting there and he starts asking him questions, I love the way he listens to Danny's answers. And again, there's the words that are being said, but there is just as much being withheld as there is being shared. Like, there is a bond being formed by these two that is probably already, you know, established. Like, there's something that they probably kind of respond to each other chemically, that now they get to kind of like acknowledge without really letting each other in on both sides, because Danny seems to be much more open at that point than Hallorann is, because I don't believe Hallorann when Danny asks him, like, you know, is this place dangerous or something like that, and he's like, or are you afraid of room 237 especially? And he's just kind of like, no, I'm not. And he's just like, okay. And there's that again, the subtext, like Danny, that little boy, I've seen him in interviews while he was shooting, and he is the sunniest, brightest, sweetest, most non-child actor you've seen, because he's just kind of I thought I was going to make some money, but I didn't know about the money, and I'd probably make like $500 now. I don't know. And he's just so cute. And you see him playing Danny Torrance, and it's like these shadows over it, like his eyes are just so, there's a depth and there's a sadness that is not played at, he just carries it with him, and because the kid himself doesn't seem to do that, I'm just aghast at the fact that he was able to convey it, and that Kubrick was able to get that from him.
Do you think that that's his voice when he's like red rum, because it's almost like it's this impossible sound to come out of this child's mouth. It's almost like the in Evil Dead 2. You mentioned when the Henrietta Deadite comes out. It was just like, someone's in my fruit salad. Whatever it was.
I mean, if it's ADR, if he looped it afterwards or someone looped it afterwards, then it's one of the best ADR jobs I've ever seen, because it sounds like it's in the room. It sounds like it's being recorded by the same mics in the same space that are recording everything else that's going on. So I don't have the answer to that definitively, but I've believed it up until now. It freaks me the fuck out. Because it sounds so much like it's coming from him, but it shouldn't, and that's why it works. But kids can do shit like that, you know?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning when he's like, Tony, like that sounds like it's
yeah, that sounds like him. Yeah, all of a sudden there's a whole, but with voice placement and stuff like that, you can make yourself sound like somebody. And some people are just gifted that way.
And
you know?
She must have been so tired because it like took a while for her to wake up and hear that shit.
Maybe that's another reason I'd want it to be at least somewhat of a supernatural element, because I there's something about that element, that poetry that Hallorann introduces in about like burnt toast leaving behind something, you know, like when toast burns in a place, something gets left behind, and that's what it's like when people who shine can essentially smell the toast, you know, like and I'd hate to think that that's just him whistling, you know, nonsense. You know, I want to believe that like Danny really has this gift, and that he's really perceiving things that are a threat to him, and that he does escape them. You know, like I do. That's why again I don't think I've ever, and I will ever watch it going like, yeah, there's nothing supernatural going on here. It's all in their heads. It's like, no, it's too much fun to not know. But not know, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he shines to him and gets him to, like, leave Florida and come back to the hotel. Like, there's... Any way you swing it, there's some supernatural shit going on in this movie.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
That's what I look forward to when I watch it. And it doesn't overwhelm me. I know that Kubrick wanted to take out those shots of all the skeletons with the cobwebs.
Oh, God, no.
Because he thought it was too traditionally like, ooh, spooky house. He thought it was so
like
predictable.
Vincent Price and
I
love it.
Too original House on Haunted Hill, you know, to use an example. And I'm glad they left it in, because I just get more of that kind of like, you know, Titanic motif. You know, like something tragic happened here, and there's something
and more Titanic with the blood coming out of the elevator.
It's not seawater. it's But and I think my favorite Simpsons take on it is probably when Marge drags Homer into the pantry and says, "And you stay here until you're no longer insane." And then she goes like, "Oh, we'll have we'll have chili tonight."
Like chili would be good.
Yeah, right. And she just picks a jar up off the pantry and leaves in there.
No, that is a great Treehouse of Horror episode. That's probably one of the best ones.
It is like, definitely a moment.
Oh, TV's out. Guess I'll go get a beer.
Yeah.
Not a drop in the house. Like Homer, you're taking this really well. Like, ah!
And to keep just like the mainstream references, like it is to the book and not the movie. But my sister to this day, when there's something she doesn't want to watch or read or anything, any kind of like artifact that she doesn't want to partake in, she wants to put it in the freezer the same way Joey would read The Shining and put it in the freezer so it couldn't get to him.
On Friends, yeah.
Yeah, on Friends. And then he and Rachel swap, and he reads Little Women and she reads The Shining, and he spoils The Shining for her. And so she spoils Little Women for her. And then she lies and says she didn't spoil it for him by saying, spoiler for Little Women, guys. It's even older than The Shining, though. Beth dies. And it really upsets him. And then she says, I just wanted to hurt you. So he goes on reading the book, and he says, at the end of the episode, I'm reading the book, and Beth is really sick, and she's not getting any better. And she's like, oh, Joey, do you want to put the book in the freezer? Okay. Because if it's in the freezer, it can't get you.
Yeah.
My sister ascribes to that mentality, and I think it's fantastic. So anyway, put things in the freezer or the pantry if they're bothering you. That's the lesson we can take from this entire discussion.
Yeah.
Just put it away. Deal with it later.
Oh, we knew this question was coming. What are their zodiac signs?
Oh dear God. I mean, no one strikes me as anything in particular. I mean, poor Wendy, what's the most agreeable sign? What's the the most willing to please?
I don't know. I mean, there's some like fight back to her, but I mean, I get definite mutable vibes from her. So we're looking at either Virgo or Sagittarius or Pisces or Gemini, and I don't get Virgo from her.
No, not really.
Yeah.
We stand our ground a little bit earlier.
Yeah. And I don't even know if I get Gemini from her.
No, she's too even. She's too even.
Yeah, I might say, like, probably either Sagittarius or Pisces.
Okay.
Because I don't see cardinal energy there. Because if she was cardinal, she would be like running that family. She would be the one in control there.
You said Pisces are always kind of like like borderline emotional conflict and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Of two minds about things. So that sounds like her.
Yeah, and they absorb the energy of those around them, but okay. I feel like Wendy also has this sort of like zest for life. Like she's just like, it's almost like, oh, we're going to live at this hotel. Like that's so exciting. It's like without even really thinking of like why this might be a bad idea. Which I'm sorry to all my Saggies out there, but there's an element to, there's just sort of like, well, this is fun, but then you kind of get into a situation just like, well, didn't think that one through.
Right.
So I mean, I think there's an argument to be made for either one of those. So I don't know. I might lean towards Sagittarius. I get fixed from him. So we're looking at Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius. And
God.
I would say Aquarius, because there's this almost like, first of all, like a detachment from him as well, of just like, wanting, like, here's the family here, and not that Aquarius are like detached emotionally, although it is kind of a stereotype, but there's sort of like this like, with his character throughout the movie, this sort of like loss of freedom, and they're like the two that are like, his family is standing in the way of that, and it's almost like there's like there's nothing worse for Aquarius than like being like suffocated in this situation where like you're trapped and confined to like, I guess like the, whatever the situation may be. So it always feels like, everything that he's going through is like this sort of like existential crisis that, I mean, like it'll just be solved if I can just get them the fuck out of there.
Yeah, there's a definite I mean, well, what sign do you think the Overlook has?
Well, the Overlook is like literally every sign of the Zodiac. It's just.
I mean,
it's the 13th sign.
It's means of persuasion, like the fact that it seems to like be encouraging him to like be like your forefathers, plant your flag, you know, like.
Oh, Gemini.
Okay. There we go. I got an answer.
Well, are you asking like who is Lloyd or Grady, or who's the guy's like nice party, isn't it?
I feel like to give over, to become part of the hotel, is to kind of like lose whatever your identity is and to become this hive mind. So I'd say they all lose who they were, like the good people they were before they crossed that threshold, or even the potential for good people, because I don't think the Jack Torrance of this movie is a good person before he takes the job and everything like that. There's even like, while I was, again, this was why I stopped reading the book, because as I was reading it, I was like getting sympathy for him, and I remembered distinctly a feeling with Jack Nicholson's Jack while he's being interviewed. He doesn't seem to like the people in the room with him, like what are the names, Ullman and Watson, but he's just kind of grinning and bearing it to try and get the job, which is like the book. But what isn't like the book is I feel like he succeeds much more at that kind of like gentleman chuckle that happens where they're just kind of you know the wife, hey, let's just say things, you know, and everything's fine, we're all white and we're all men. You know, it's got that energy. He's too good at it, whereas the Jack of the book, I feel, is smarmy. Like, the Jack of the book is a little bit more like, you know, digging his nails into his fists, you know, going like, I can't believe I have to sit here and be subjected to this piece of shit. But okay, well, whatever. But and Ullman seems much more agreeable to him too. So I was just kind of like, okay, they're two different things. See them as two different things. But that was another thing that occurred to me with this Ullman. I picked up on the line. I don't remember if he said this in the book, but in the movie, he alludes to Grady as his predecessor. As I think he says Charles Grady though, and wasn't he Delbert Grady in the? So I don't understand what's going on there.
That disorientation,
disorientation. There you go. Because I could have sworn he said Charles Grady, but he says he was his predecessor and he's the one who killed his family with an axe and then shot himself. And I was like, okay, so he was your predecessor, so he did your job and Jack's job. You must know what's coming because you're opting out and hiring someone else to take over because you don't want to kill anyone and you don't want to shoot yourself. What a
he wasn't the immediate predecessor, because this is like this. He said it happened 10 years ago, and it was before he was, you know, even on staff there. So this would have been 1970.
Again, the timeline though, because then Jack mentions when he starts drinking with fucking Lloyd. 5 months down the drain or whatever the fuck he says, but he alludes to 5 months, and I'm like, we just cut from the exchange with Hallorann and Danny to a month ahead, and Wendy said had been 5 months sober before that happened, so it should be at least 6 months, if not more. So it tells me like, okay, maybe
Wendy added a month on because she was trying to like pretend the situation. What I think is so funny about that is because it's like she's telling this story and it's like all seriousness and just like the way that she's convincing herself that everything's fine, and then it's just like, and that was 3 weeks ago, and everything's been fine since. You know, like you tell a story like that, and it's like, oh, this is ancient history, but no, this was pretty recent. You know, like it's not gonna happen again.
It was 3 years. That's what Jack says. I forget if she says the same time. See, that's the thing. The time, and they just play with it. I have no, because it's funny. I didn't assume that she was lying. I assumed that he must have like fallen off the wagon, but didn't tell her. So he does have 5 months now that he's saying it, like at the bar. But also, again, they're playing with our perception, disorientation. It could always come back to that. And I think this movie succeeds enough that I'm willing to give it that. If there's any inconsistencies, well, it's supposed to. You know, nature of the beast.
Oh my gosh. Was this ever filmed where there's an ending where Ullman comes back and he visits Wendy and Danny in the hospital?
Was there? You're asking like it happened, maybe.
I don't know if it was like one of those things that's in the script, or it's like a thing that there's actually shots of it because they filmed it and it just like disappeared completely.
Oh my god! I mean, I can understand why if it did, because it's like we know they got away. They're cool. They're on the little.
We don't need the 5 endings.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is an example of like the perfect way to end a movie, because you're right at like the height of the climax, everything's happening, and then they get away. He sits down, bam, frozen to death, and then we like do the push in on the photo while the right. Midnight and the stars and you is playing, and it's just like that's how you do it. You don't need like. You know, when we talked about MaXXXine, where it's just like we're gonna have the ambulance scene, and then we're gonna and then we're gonna have a week later, and everything's copacetic now, and then this showing what's happening. Like, just one ending. That's all we need.
I feel like it would have been very Argento though if they would have just ended it at the little tableau of Jack after he's frozen, just ding, and then credits.
You have been watching.
Yeah,
you have been watching The Shining.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought about other filmmakers while I was watching this. I thought about. We watched Alien recently, and I thought about the way they established the ship, Shining establishing the Overlook. Even John Carpenter, after the fact, not establishing, but revisiting, reintroducing venues and everything like that. And I just thought, like, I like this. I like the fact that everybody kind of finds their way to do it. With Kubrick, it's watching people move through them. With Ridley, it's like, these will be housed by characters that you're going to get to know. And with John Carpenter, it's like, remember what happened here? I love it.
Yeah.
I love that everybody gets like their own version of, establishing these venues and making them, imprint to the point where I dream about them like a bathroom. Oh, I hate that bathroom, Zach. It scares the shit out of me.
Just the red one, not the green one.
Yeah, the green. Well, the green one. Isn't there a hotel that actually has like?
Well, no, it was like an Airbnb, and they I don't know if they designed everything to be The Shining, or they just designed. There was like, here's from this horror movie and this horror movie.
Sure,
but there was the bathroom, and they did. It's a much smaller space, but they kind of designed it in the same fashion, like the same. Molding and color and there's wallpaper and the way that the bathtub looks and it looks fabulous, and I don't think I could relax in that. I would. I love when we first go in and just see like the carpeting, which is just so like, speaking of like the 70s to the 80s.
No, visiting the actual site, I've yet to do it in my lifetime, and of the actual hotel. I don't know if
the Stanley.
I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if I could do it. It seems like tempting fate almost, you know? Like, I mean, granted, probably nothing's going to happen while it's inhabited and everything. Like, worst case scenario, you get snowed in and maybe the power goes off and they only have the backup generator and maybe only half of it is running on electricity. But I'm sure they've got, all their fail safes. Yeah. But I wonder what it would be like, if I'd be fine or if I'd be on edge the entire time.
Would you? I mean, I know it doesn't exist in real life, but I mean, would you go into a hedge maze?
Yeah, the only thing that I think I would, but the only thing that would make me kind of hesitate first is I'd think like, okay, take my Dramamine beforehand, because the crew would literally get lost in it and get nauseous. And so now that I know that you can get vertigo and that you can get nauseous, getting lost in it, I'd probably take whatever precautions I could beforehand. But I think I would do that.
You know what?
What about you?
Actually, I would be in there, and I would like learn it. I would like know like the
I would be thinking more Lewis Carroll though, more like Alice in Wonderland.
We're talking about amazing shots and impossible shots when he's looking down at the model
100%
of the thing, and it's just like, it's obviously the maze is not that big when we're kind of like pushing down and we see them walking through it, but it's just like it like adds to that disorientation, and it's just like it really amps up the atmosphere and the dread of this movie, and also and you know, you mentioned Alice in Wonderland, but also like the wonderment of it all, because like that does seem like a really fun thing. Like every day I would be like, hey, let's go for a walk in the maze, you know. My God, he would have killed me way sooner than he tried to kill Wendy.
I would have left.
Hey, hon, we're gonna go to the maze. You're gonna come. Like,
no, I would have pulled a Hansel and Gretel and left breadcrumbs as I went, and then, you know, try to follow them. And if the birds ate the crumbs like they do in the fairy tale, I'd follow the birds.
You would follow the bird poop.
Follow the bird poop.
Okay. The last thing we should talk about is what we mentioned earlier. Is just sort of the relationship between Kubrick and Shelley Duvall, and sort of like the what was going on there, because I don't know if that's a thing that's just sort of like was embellished and like got turned into this whole thing, because one of the like last interviews that she gave, which was like more recently, she talked about Stanley Kubrick and spoke about him with great reverence and just like respect for a filmmaker and just like as a human being. And it's like, it doesn't sound like the experience of a person who was abused on set as like the rumors went. And I know that there's the behind the scenes footage that I know has been around forever. It's, you know, it was on the DVD that I had originally when I, you know, first bought the movie. Shot and it's just like, and that's
Kubrick, his daughter.
Yeah. And that's when, you know, Shelley's just sitting there and she's just like, Stanley, my hair's falling out. And he's just like, all right, we're going back to work. And like, like, whatever, you're fine. And they're having like, there's a moment where they're not really like fighting. Like, it's not a heated exchange, but like, I think she's just like, you know, she's in the bathroom and he's like hollering something, and she comes out and she's like, what? And there's just like this thing of just like, oh, like, okay, whatever. Like, it was clearly a demanding set, but I don't know if you had more insight into this alleged abuse.
This is the thing. Like, I let the alleged victim, the perceived victim, be the one to define their experience and whether, you know, it's abuse or not. I mean, I know laws do as well, but I mean, because also, I mean, there are tons of people who worked with Kubrick who came out of the woodwork, you know, supporting him and talking about what a benevolent force he was, and, you know, especially his crews. But that's the thing. His crews are not the people who are on screen. And it was kind of the thing to do. It didn't end with with what, you know, could have transpired between Kubrick and Shelley Duvall on that set. I know Kim Basinger went through a similar thing when she did 9.5 Weeks, where the director just needed her to be an absolute frazzle, so he was awful to her and, you know, pushed her and pushed her and pushed her to the point where she was no longer performing. She was just having a nervous breakdown, and that's what he wanted. And we've talked about, you know, like with William Friedkin with The Exorcist, and we've talked about, you know, the list goes on and on. Predominantly male directors doing this with predominantly female performers. And I think it was something that was kind of allowed, kind of, you know, perceived as like, well, he's an artist, he's a genius. That can all be true. He can be a genius, but my attitude about it is what I perceived going on in the footage that I've been exposed to, what little I've been exposed to. They obviously were not getting along. Shelley Duvall seemed to be coming from a genuine place of wanting to please and wanting to just kind of enjoy herself, if she could, on this set, because Jack Nicholson certainly was. But
well, I mean, the thing with Jack Nicholson is that he got to play himself. You know, he got to play a version of that where maybe not himself, but like that character that, you know,
I mean, he got to redefine the character. Yeah. You could tell he is having a ball. He had moved into his full Jack Nicholson S-ness, you know, and by that point where he gets on screen and he is a star, it is undeniable. He is compelling to watch. Like I said, I would never recast him in this role. Yeah. It's
unless
weird.
It was like Joan Crawford.
Unless it was Joan Crawford and Betty Davis.
Well, not Betty, but just like a gender swap where Joan Crawford plays Jack Torrance, and then you can have, I don't know, like Errol Flynn or something.
Oh, interesting. Or any of the men who played kind of second banana to Joan Crawford.
Yeah, as Wendell.
As
Torrance.
Wendell. Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Jacqueline and Wendell Torrance.
Joan Crawford has wielded many an axe in her career, so absolutely, I'd pay full price to see that. But no, I think so. What I perceived was essentially that dynamic, and also I've experienced it firsthand, where there is a director who he has always been lauded for. Kubrick, I'm talking about, has always been lauded as a photographer and as a cinematic master. Yeah. I've very rarely. It wasn't until I think I heard the testimonials, not the testimony, but the in memoriam videos for Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman speaking about his gifts, guiding them as actors. Haven't heard a lot of other people praising him for his work with actors. It wasn't until his last film. Maybe it's just footage I haven't seen, but I know that directors who are less adept at working with actors, at interacting with them on their level and working toward a performance will agitate when when they need to, when they see fit, because it's just kind of like, I know I need this thing, I know what I need, and I'd much rather, Brian De Palma did it with Amy Irving and Carrie too. I'll just get on your nerves to evoke a response, because I haven't worked with you before, and I don't care to take the time to know whether I can just kind of whisper in your ear, the night before, or just kind of take your hand right before we roll and say, why don't we try it this way? I need to know that I'm going to get what I need. I have a whole crew of people here, so I'm just going to maybe not abuse you, but hurtle abuses in your direction. And if I get what I need, then it was all worth it. And I think Kubrick was definitely of that era. And I do think Shelley Duvall was definitely unhappy. And I do think, in retrospect, when she looked back on it, she kind of felt like, it was hell to go through, but look what happened. I saw someone memorializing her, kind of condemning Kubrick recently, and saying, she was never the same after she was on that set. And it seemed like kind of the same kind of propaganda that gets boosted up when people are like, Heath Ledger died because of his investment in the Joker and stuff like that. It's
it's almost like the narrative that Kubrick drove her to insanity, which is she's not insane. It was this thing that the Dr. Phil thing exacerbated it. But there was an interview I saw where it was a few years after The Shining, maybe within 5 years or so, or it might have been 1987, and she's just talking about The Shining, and they brought up the whole thing of how many takes you had to do, and she's just she spoke about it very fondly. It was just it was tough work, but it was just a really great experience, and again spoke very kindly of Kubrick. Sure. And I remember an interview that she did. She was on a talk show, and this was 1990. So after this, and at this point she had purchased a farm and had over 100 different animals, and she was talking about the food bill, and it was just okay, this is not a crazy person. This is definitely an eccentric person. This is someone who has very, very unique interests and hobbies in things. But you could sort of see a timeline of just where things would be going. It's just obviously she enjoys being herself and just doing these things and moving away from what is perceived or as a movie star, and to a point where 10 years after that she just quit acting altogether. And you don't know what goes on in people's lives, and then to just turn up in 2015 or whatever it was, and on Dr. Phil, and just be Shelley Duvall today, and it's easy to just sort of say, well, Stanley Kubrick drove her to be crazy. It's just the Wizard of Oz, what that did to Judy Garland and all these things. So I mean,
there weren't years and years of abuse prior to that, and or even subsequent. But with Shelley Duvall, the thing that kind of got a bee in my bonnet about condemning Kubrick for violating her in a way, and violating her sanity. I feel like it does a disservice to Shelley Duvall as an entity unto herself. I think she's an incredibly strong actress. But also beyond that, and as an executive producer, she was the mover and the shaker. She was in charge of sets. She was the one producing on television. You do wear like the boss's cap. The director is not the one in control. The writers and the producers are the ones who are in control. And she acted in numerous projects after that. And I never heard, and maybe everyone's just keeping it hush hush, but I feel like someone would have come forward and said, yeah, it was really difficult to gauge where she would be, you know, on any given day. No, she was a real artist. Yeah. She showed up and knew how to take the hits and try to make her losses into wins, and just moved forward and wanted to provide entertainment for the masses and for children ultimately. Mm-hmm. And I wish that would be her legacy, instead of just seeing her as this kind of like perceived victim forever, who suffered for the rest of her life because of her experience on one set. I think she's a lot stronger and more resilient than that.
Yeah, so, and especially in her more recent interviews before her death, like it seemed, you know, it undid any of that damage that old Phil did. Because he's not a real doctor, but that all sounds like cardinal energy. So I had to look it up, and sure enough, she's born July 7th, July 7th, died July 11th. So she 4 days after her 75th birthday. But cancer, cardinal sign there.
Wow.
I wonder what Jack Nicholson is.
and then
we'll move on. He is April 22nd. That's cuspy. That's like Taurus. I feel like that's April 20th. That's Taurus.
My bestie's April 25th, and she's a Taurus. So
he seems like a Taurus. He's got that vibe to him.
Yeah. And I say that with love. My best friend is a Taurus.
And I'll always say it. I hate every sign equally.
Of course.
So most of all my own. So with that, let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
So, I mean, I feel like we're probably in agreement here, but I mean, sometimes you throw, curveballs at me. So, cherry on top. I mean, the thing is, like, this was the, I've always appreciated Shelley Duvall's performance in this, but I mean, I think, after watching it, like, post-mortem, and just like really watch, like, paying a little bit more attention to her this time than anyone else. I just like, she really shined brighter than anyone else, because I mean, like we talked about Jack Nicholson and like his performance and how special that is as well. And I mean, like, he probably always would have been like the highlight, because I mean, he's a very quotable character. Yes. So is she.
Here's
but
Johnny.
There's just I think, everything that we talked about, and just like the heart and soul that she put into the character, and just, with everything. I mean, it's Shelley. It's Wendy.
Yeah, I agree. She is, I mean, even prior to this recording and prior to this past week, she was always the one who I looked forward to seeing. Her and Danny, of course, because the little boy gives a remarkable performance.
I think everyone is great in this. I mean, it's a small cast, but...
Did you ever see the interview that they did with Scatman Crothers where he wept? They asked him, like, how did you feel doing that scene with that boy? And he just started weeping from gratitude because of the opportunity he had to play this character and work with these wonderful people. It was so moving. Maybe. It was beautiful. Yeah, everybody on set just amazing. So, yeah.
All right.
But I agree. Shelley.
Last week we asked you who deserves to die the most in MaXXXine.
Hey!
MaXXXine.
No.
If it's 3 again, it's MaXXXine. But okay. Buster was my nomination. The Gloved Killer was yours. We're keeping it spoiler free. See, we are sensitive to spoilers.
100%.
Across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the final vote was 123 for Buster and 294 for The Gloved Killer.
Oh my god. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Let's read some of the comments.
Yeah.
Knife to the heart. Yeah. Sean Princek. I can honestly say I hated X. Ooh.
Oh.
And didn't bother to watch Pearl because I had such an unpleasant time watching X. So I have no interest in seeing MaXXXine either. However, X didn't make me angry like watching Candyman 1992 did. I'll pick the... What? I'll pick the one with killer in their name. Killers are usually bad people. Sorry, I know how much everyone loves these movies. It just wasn't for me.
Okay.
All right. Well, we appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, nothing to be said. I it's hard to voice an opinion that goes way against the grain. So,
yeah.
Respect for that.
Welshman says, can we get a chance to watch the movie before deciding? Not everyone gets to see every movie opening weekend. And again, Welshman, this was spoiler free, so
yeah, we
like,
never spoil that people die, and and we didn't disclose the identity of the glove killer, even though I disclosed the identity in the episode. But no one who is not seen the movie.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know if we might not have even said like spoiler warning, but that's like if we're talking about a movie,
At length?
don't for like 2 hours or whatever. Like, don't go listen to a thing before you see the movie. That's just
see the movie.
Yeah,
see the movie.
Or I mean, if you do, then just expect that we're gonna talk about it ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Anyway, Welshman. I mean, figure things out. Come on. Thomas Baker, the gloved killer. Halsey deserved some justice in that movie. Do you know who Halsey is? Am I even saying it Halsey or is it Halsey?
I'm the last person to ask.
Yeah, I have no idea. I guess she's like a musical artist, a singer or whatever.
Yeah.
But I got like reamed out by, I'm not gonna say who it was, but because I thought this was funny because they're just like, you don't know who Halsey is? And I'm just like, no. Like, and then I found an interview where it was like the whole cast and Halsey. She was like, I guess the short hair played the character named Tabby. And she was asking them, it was just like, name one of my songs. And not a single one of them could name a song of hers.
So obviously she's not universal yet, which is fine.
And these are they're the people that she worked with. I just thought it was very ironic in the best way possible.
Okay. Doesn't mean she's not good. Just means we don't know who she is.
We don't know
yet.
her. Yeah. I wish
we know her from this.
I wish that there was more for her to do in that movie.
I liked her. I thought she did a really, really good job in the movie. So thumbs up for everything I've been exposed to up until now. But I'm also not a big. If it's pop music or anything, I'm like current music. I'm not.
I don't know. I don't know any.
I don't even know what kind of artist she is, but whatever it is, I'm not listening to it. So that's why I don't know. It's no disrespect.
And it's not because we don't want to. I just we're old.
Thank you for including yourself.
You'll have the same thought process one day.
One day you'll be in our shoes and you'll be like, who? And people will be like, you don't know. Yeah,
you'll have the back pain and the everything.
The tummy trouble. Go on.
Yeah. Matty Ice. Buster. No motive, no reason. Complete coward. Didn't mind seeing him strip. But everything MaXXXine did to him was 100% justified. Buster got busted.
I agree with that.
John Carlos McMaster.
Hey.
Look, I know the gloved killer killed all of Maxine's friends and their ideologies fucked up, but Buster Keaton sullied the good name of Buster Keaton. He's got to go.
We mentioned that, yeah.
I love the fact that John Carlos, your best friend, has always
my oldest friend.
Seems to be siding with me a lot these days.
I know, right?
Yeah,
but it's okay. He can.
I appreciate
we're
that.
tight.
Yeah, you're seeing him after this. You tell him I said thanks.
Okay, I will.
All right. Lexi's Mychinsky. I feel like that's someone's name, and I just said it like very like question.
Like you're sounding out like.
Am I trying to say?
What is the phrase? What is the acronym? Like, yeah.
Lexi, maybe it's like Lexi Smychinsky, the gloved killer, because why was he watching spoiler strip?
Oh, okay.
And then another comment from the same commenter. I will give Gloved Killer props for somehow putting together a whole movie crew and getting a house in the Hollywood Hills with that. Okay, yeah. I feel like we're going into spoiler territory here.
Oh,
so,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Silent Saturn. Buster got a fate worse than death already, and his scene was one of the best in the movie. He even provided some eye candy. Leave him be. Gloved Killer was the definition of wasted potential, apart from that Jallo moment. Yada, yada, yada. See, now I'm trying to be so diplomatic here. off with his head.
Okay, because this is a different episode. This is an episode about The Shining.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think mindfulness is key.
It is, yeah. Demon XD. I see what you did there.
Nice. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Just
with the masking.
With the mindfulness. Yeah. And then Michael Diamond, the gloved killer, because he, and then spoilers.
Okay.
but Michael actually wrote spoilers and then
that's
the rest.
Sweet.
So,
that's lovely.
But I mean, to everyone, I mean, if you're, again, it's a poll about this, like, stay away from it if you don't want to, Yeah, I mean, the comments at least. And if you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen the movie, you don't have to participate in it. But this is what our podcast is. This is the cherry picker. This is what happens. So anyway, clearly you won. So you're gonna tell me who's.
You're always so elated when I win.
I know. Well, it's been happening a lot lately, and it's kind of chapping my ass.
I don't think I've surpassed you yet, though. Have I? I haven't had a
Amethyst
look at the spreadsheet in a long time.
Who keeps the spreadsheet. There's a link to it on the YouTube page. Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'll take a look before our next episode, and I'll know where we are.
Okay.
But I guess for me, I gotta go with. I gotta go with Stuart Ullman, the guy who hires Jack, because of what I perceived from what I saw. He's a man who knew enough to know to stay away, and still hired someone knowing. I feel like he knew the whole movie was going to happen, and so therefore he is culpable. It's like I can't blame the Overlook Hotel or any of the presences in it. Like, I mean, I hate a lot of the things that come out of the mouth of Grady, but I think I have to attribute it to that hive mind, and therefore I can't necessarily nominate it because I don't think hive minds fall under the rules that we established. But that's my perception. I kind of feel like the Overlook Hotel's gonna Overlook Hotel, so you can't really blame it. Whereas he's a human being, he's flesh and blood. It's almost like he's feeding him to the monster. So I think he's the one who deserved to die. He should have stayed that winter and shot his fucking self in the head, like Grady style. Yeah. So there you go. He knew. Or found an alternative. Yeah. Find another way. So die, motherfucker. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if y'all know this, but we did a podcast before the Cherry Picker started, which was just a Patreon exclusive thing that we did, and we talked about The Shining before, and we started to do. We didn't call it the Cherry Picker at that point, but we had a who deserves to die the most, and you picked Grady, and and you got first dibs too at that point. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll pick Ullman, because it's just like, you hire, do a better job hiring. So,
I forgot about my perception has evolved since then, I guess.
Interesting.
I don't see him as an individual entity.
I mean, you really lobby hard with these things, like you should choose this person because he did this and that, and you know, and you were very adamantly like kill Grady and
if he was an individual, like from my perception,
your pick, Ullman. What did he do? And now the tides have changed. You know, they've turned, and now you're picking my pick. That was going to be my pick again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm just going to pick your original pick, which was Grady, and see. Just, I mean, for chopping up, for correcting his daughters who tried to. With a match. I don't know what they did, but
one of them tried to start a fire. Yeah,
and he corrected them, and just his there's some racial slurs there.
God,
that are a little uncomfortable, but
hideous.
Yeah, and also, I mean, as a one more slight, as a server, what a pushover. I mean, like, clearly. I don't remember who bumped into who, but I mean, he was just like kissing his ass, like, so sorry, sir. Like, just, okay.
He bumped into Jack, and Jack was, again, mildly irritated, just kind of going, it's all right.
All right, yeah.
I have jackets.
How about this? Just do a better job as a server.
Oh my God!
I am not one to talk. Let me tell you how many drinks I spilled on people by accident and intentional.
I hope I sealed the service industry vote. Just from your comment.
Well, I mean, most people vote before
people in the service industry. I'm a great tipper. I always try to give 20% or more. So deal with it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That makes me happy. But anyway, those are your options. You can vote for. Is it Dilbert or Delbert?
This is the thing. I could have sworn the first time he introduces him that Ullman talks about him, he calls him Charles Grady. And
okay, no. I know that.
I thought he was Delbert. I heard Delbert.
Okay.
D-E-L.
So Delbert Grady or Stuart Ullman. You can vote on Patreon. Whether you're supporting or not, head over there. That's an extra place you can vote. You can vote on our Instagram account. Go follow us at the Cherry Picker Pod, or you can vote on YouTube in the community section here. That is the Cherry Picker. If you are listening to us, head over there, subscribe. You can see our faces. If you are already on YouTube and watching this, the RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. You can listen to us if that's more your cup of tea. Where can they find you on social media, Edward?
You can find me on YouTube. What are they again? The TikTok, the Instagram, and the Letterboxd. If you type in Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling, you should find me. I don't know if I can get followers, but now that I'm starting to read again, I'm on the Bookshelf app. And I don't know if people can follow me there, but try. I think I'm Edward is Truth on there too, but I don't know. Yeah. So, but if you can follow me there, feel free, because I need support. How about you, Zach?
You can find me on my main YouTube channel, Zach Cherry. I'm on Letterboxd, Zach Cherry 8. Twitter is Zach Cherry 8. Letterboxd is Zach Cherry. Instagram is Retro Bitch Face. Also, Macabre the movie on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Head over to the pre-launch campaign page on Kickstarter as well. So much to remember. And yeah, I don't do that TikTok thing. So what is happening next week?
The other one is that's not Courage. In the behind the scenes in the dressing room.
God! Yeah.
It's StageFright.
StageFright from 1987. So it's like it's a slasher. It's Italian.
I could have sworn it was older than that. Yeah,
1987.
We'll talk about it, but it feels older than.
Yeah, and it's there's a little bit of a connection to Black Christmas. I mean, not connected like that way, but
not
like
they're in the same universe.
Spiritually, we'll talk about it when we get to
will.
it. That you'll appreciate. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right